to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.com. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. My guest and I are always excited when you join us. So here's the deal, right? We hear that word change and we get that knot in our stomach, like humada humada, here we go. So here's the deal. I get it. Whether you've chosen the change or the change has been thrust upon you, right? It doesn't really matter. We get that angst or that indecision or uncertainty of what to do next. I believe that every time change occurs in our life, the core skill that's needed is communication. So in the show notes, you'll see my link to the communication style assessment, my gift to you. You'll get 2 reports. The first report, after you take it, you'll get your highest score, and that report will actually spotlight just your natural communication superpowers and how your message lands without effort. Here's the more important report. Your lowest score, potential blind spot. That's where you're communicating with people 180 degrees different than you. How is your message landing there? So read that report, really identify that blind spot. And I truly hope that the communication style assessment helps you navigate whatever change that you're going through right now in your life or career. Now, to set the stage for my topic today with my guest, the quote is by Todd Henry, and Todd says, "Ego says, I can do no wrong, whereas confidence says, I can get this right. Confidence says, I'm valuable, while ego says, I'm invaluable." So the ego resides in our subconscious mind and creates these identities. These identities help get us through challenging situations like change, and they really try to help keep us safe. They also keep us, believe it or not, from being happy. So when I train, I often use the iceberg image, right? You know, the little tippy top, that top 5%, that's our conscious mind at work. Well, guess what? The underwater stuff, that 95% under the iceberg, that's where we are really functioning from, which is our subconscious mind. So do you know what your subconscious is telling you and how it's leading you? Probably not. So what's driving your life? The reality is it's that subconscious and or that ego perspective. So today, who is my amazing guest that we are going to dive deep into this very cool topic? His name is Dan Jimenez. Full transparency, he is my awesome cousin from across the country. He's in Hawaii. I'm on the East Coast. So Dan, I'm very happy to have you here. Now, Dan is a self-proclaimed human experience enthusiast. Dan's known for his positive mental attitude, unique philosophical outlook, and adventurous spirit. As a husband, father, and veteran, he's always striving to live life to its fullest. Dan is the co-founder of Axistence, training for a life of adventure, and a former military security force officer who has worked with hundreds of people to help them perform better and live more fully. He has dedicated the last 12 plus years to helping people discover their most adventurous lives. So please help me welcome my adventurous cousin, Dan, to the show. So Dan, thanks for being on, kiddo.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have some more conversations.
Yes, we talk monthly, my buddy here. So I'm going to share, Dan, I don't know if you remember this, before you got married and moved, my kids were really young and they thought Dan was the cool of the cousins because they called him Spy Dad because he was in the military. And I remember you used to go under tables and have them hide and do all these things. They loved Dan. So Dan has been an adventurous spirit from when you were a little boy. So I'm really excited to spotlight you and share what you're doing with the world because it's important stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love those memories. And when I hear those stories, it's cool that that's kind of stuck with them.
Yeah. I mean, how many years later too, Dan, right? Like you've been a grown up you've been
at least
adulting.
20 years. Yeah.
Exactly. I love it. All right. So first question, let's get down to business now. Tell everybody, that intro, yes, you do mindset work, right, for that adventurous lifestyle, but tell people really what you do because you've curated and really have perfected this craft over the past decade or so.
Yeah. So what I like to say is I pull from a lot of different disciplines, and ultimately I help people to live their most adventurous life. So, whether it's coaching, fitness is kind of how I got started with coaching people. And if you can't move your body, if you don't, if you're locked up in that physical domain, it's really hard to kind of unlock the rest of your life. how much access do you really have to living an adventurous life if, you're only living at 25% of your physical capacity. So that's kind of where it started. And then one thing that I realized, like after training years and years and years with hundreds of people, through both personal training and then that Existence Academy for Adventure that my co-founder Ryan and I started, we realized that, people, once they started opening up some of their physical, we realized like the mental blocks and the mental barriers were actually, limiting them even further. And
Yeah.
some of their physical limitations actually all stemmed from their mental limitations. So that's kind of how the mindset thing, every every coaching session ended up being like a therapy session towards the end of it. And so what we realized was we saw people push past their limits, and just adventure, right? Adventure is one of those words that a lot brings up different meanings for different people. I know I talk with you about adventure. You're like, nope, not for me. I not my lifestyle. Uh, and this is where I'd say like one of the big defining characteristics of adventure, at least in my definition of it, is you come out a different person than when you went in. And it's not just like a little change or an incremental change. It's a fundamental shift to your way of being. And so you've entered marriage, you've had children, you've started your own business, you've had to pivot your business due to gigantic world global, situational changes.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say you are a huge proponent of adventure in your life. It just looks maybe a little different than, jumping out of planes and scuba diving and all of those types of things. So
Yeah.
when I think of adventure, I think of transformation. That's those two words are synonymous. And so what we do is we put people through physical challenges, whether it's in the gym or outside the gym, taking them on actual, what you would think of as an adventure, or even just challenging their mind and their daily, relationships that they have, whether it's with spouses, children, partners, or even their business relationships. And so through all of these mediums, the gym, the outside adventure, mindset coaching, basically what we're doing is we're just pushing people to live outside their comfort zone
Mm.
so that they grow and they transform their
Yeah.
fundamental way of being.
And I'm so glad, because my follow-up question was going to be define adventure, right? Because now Dan, for those of you that obviously don't know him, he was in the military, jumping out of planes, doing the scuba diving. He climbs Mount, like I know it wasn't Mount Everest, but you've climbed, you have surfed in tremendous conditions. So you truly live what in my world, when I hear the word adventure, you would be like in the poster child for that for me. So I'm so glad you said, because what we think adventure is, we are living adventurous lives. Many of us, we just went and define it that way. So yes, I guess opening a business, raising a family, there's adventure, man, every day. So I agree with how you've defined it. The other thing I like, Dan, that you said is adventure actually is about transformation. And when COVID hit, right, I had to transform not only my own brain, because I didn't know digital stuff, right? I'm older. This technology kind of passed me by to some extent. So I had to double down and learn that while changing my whole business model. So that was an adventure. It wasn't a good adventure, but it was an adventure nonetheless. So I'm glad you broke that down, because I know people hear, oh, adventure, this show isn't for me because I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'm not either. I like the water, I like to swim, but I'm not climbing mountains, and I'm not going to get on a surfboard. That's just not my jam at all. I'm a Pilates girl, right, Dan?
Yeah. And it's funny. This was maybe over a decade ago. I was at a dollar store and my wife saw this mug and she was like, "Oh, you need this mug." And the mug says, "Life is my favorite adventure."
Oh,
And it has, I mean, I still have it. I ate cereal out of it this morning. But it's such a simple quote, and it's one of the like is one of my favorite, and I feel like it really defines not only my life but life in general. Is like life is my favorite adventure. There's
yeah,
ups and downs. It's all about transformation. It's all about growth. It's all about, evolving to that next level of consciousness as a human being.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, adventure, the mediums change. It doesn't have to be mountaineering or, some death defying thing. But, in a lot of cases, a lot of what you've gone through and most people are going through is actually more risky and more existentially threatening
Mm,
than climbing a mountain.
mm,
It's like, yeah, you put yourself in harm's way, you do something, but you train for it, you have backup plans and everything. But someone who's like running a business and this is their livelihood, or someone who's, going to lose their job or in this, really deep relationship that they feel stuck in, like that's their life. That's powerful. That's way more important. That's way more, I'd say, risky than, going out and
yeah.
surfing during a hurricane.
Yeah. But I think it's important that we do these definitions because, again, perspective, right? You have your perspective of, and I've learned so much from you about what adventure actually means, right? With that transformational piece attached to it. So I'm glad that we grounded and kind of define that. Next question. What's the basis of so understanding mindset, right? And helping people get that transformation through adventure. Again, define adventure for yourself. What's the basis of the system of how you actually work with people to get them from, and I'm going to assume like point A to little b. They're not going from point A to Z, right? They're little baby steps along the way.
Yeah, and I'd agree, yes and no, right? Everyone's a little different. One of the things that I love about coaching and the style of practice that we do is the fact that sometimes it is a huge A to Z shift, and it happens in an instant.
Mm.
One of the things that we say, like change happens in an instant. It's not this long drawn out process that we actually think it is. We make it a long drawn out process. We choose to suffer and pull it out, but with change, it's like a light switch, right? It happens instantaneously. You flick it on. The problem is it can instantaneously change back as well,
Uh,
right? And you could flick it off just as easily. So in the weight loss realm, right? You get there and you're like, I'm ready to lose weight. I'm not going to do another day. This is it. And you make that change in that very instant. 5 days later, your subconscious kicks in and shuts that light switch off. And it's like, nope, this is not for me. It's usually not so apparent. It's usually more subtle. And so this is where the subconscious plays in. So if you look at the big picture of what we do, 95% of what you do every day is subconscious behaviors, right? Your thoughts, your words, your actions, your habits, that's all subconscious programming. And you've developed that over your lifetime. A lot of it was developed in the first 5 years of life. And then, big identity defining moments that have happened, traumas, positive traumas, so there's good things that have happened in your life that were really intense, and you received it as intense, as well as the bad stuff has kind of shaped what your subconscious programming is, not to mention just repetition and repetition of daily life.
yeah.
And so based on that, your results that you get in life and the results you don't get in life are based on this autopilot subconscious living that you're doing every day. And so when I think of human beings and the human avatar, we have this mind, and if the mind is driving our daily actions, and 95% of those actions we're not even consciously choosing, we're subconsciously choosing because of the programming that we've done, that's really where we need to work, and we need to highlight those situations for people. And it's amazing because some people, they don't get it right away and it takes them a while. And other people, as soon as you show them the program that they're running about one particular aspect of their life, it can be that light switch that flips on, and now they can't shut it off. You can't unsee it once you've seen what's going on. You can maybe choose to ignore it, but it's gonna nag at you. So that's kind of the shift that we do with people through coaching.
And to share with everybody, you recently just got back from literally being in the wilderness, and we had a meeting on Monday, and it was so profound the experience you had that, and I'm going to paraphrase, and then I want you to dig in to bridge it over to that subconscious and that programming that once we remove ourselves, it becomes glaringly clear how much programming is happening every day through media, noise, etc. So when you went, literally, you had to create your little tools and everything, from the thing you drank from to catching animals. You lived off the land. They gave you no precautions, right? So you had to make your bed with leaves. If you didn't have enough leaves, you were chilly that night. So it was raw, guys. He was sharing. I said, well, I would have died in the first 5 minutes. And remember, he's been doing this. You've been doing this for a long time. I want you to share what that deprivation, and you used the word on Monday to me. You said, Connie, I wasn't bored at all, though. There was always something to do, and it was very joyful or happy, right? You were happy there. And then when you came home, the re-entering into the normal, I'm using the word normal, your home life, was a little bit of a disconnect, not because of the family, but because of all of the other stuff. Just share that experience, because this is profound stuff that Dan is not going to ask you to go and live off the dirt, but I want you to understand what we're talking about at the subconscious, how we are programmed and we don't even know it's happening. You know what I'm talking about, right, Dan?
Yeah. No, and thanks for bringing that up. So, much like the people I work with, I try to practice what I preach, right? And I try to do one big transformational activity a year, one big adventure a year, whether that's, signing up for a marathon. And doing the actual marathon isn't what changes you for most people. It's all of the training leading up to it. Who do you have to become to be someone who can run a marathon?
Yes.
It means committing to a schedule. It means, doing the thing you say you're going to do, which is a huge, huge piece of personal power. So in that, this year, it was actually for my 40th birthday last year, but it got postponed a year. I did this 14-day course. My wife, it was a hunter-gatherer course. So it was a 14-day survival course. But I'd done survival courses in the past, and this one was primitive skills only. So you couldn't bring a knife, you couldn't bring water bottles, definitely no flashlights, no sunglasses, no, amenities of the modern world. So you had to, cut open a gourd and hollow it out and spend 3 days leaching out all the tannins so you can have a drinking vessel and those types of things. So yeah, I mean, we were maybe eating about 100 calories a day. It was whatever we caught and foraged for. I had trained leading up to it. I did, specific diets and some intermittent fasting and hike training and training while hungry and those types of things. And I thought it was going to be really difficult. And, the big surprise that I had, I was like looking for this transformation in my life. I was looking for this, big aha, come back fundamentally a different person than I set out. And I was actually kind of disappointed with how not challenging this challenge was. It was like caught off guard by it, because usually doing the thing is the challenge. And it wasn't until the very next day after I, had returned to civilization, got to my hotel, went out for dinner, flew back home. And then that first 24 hours was just such a jarring juxtaposition from the 14 days I'd been living before. Not just comforts of, a pile of leaves in a cave versus, comfy bed, down mattress or down comforter, all of those types of things. It was the internal dialogue that was going on in my head and how I was interacting with all of the stimulus around me. And, out when you're in nature and you're living for your basic needs, right? Like food, water. I'm tired. I'm going to take a nap. I need food. Okay. I'm going to go forage for something, or I'm going to set a trap, or I'm going to check my traps. Like it's very, I have this need or this want or this desire, and it's mine, right? Like it's no one else's desire. And as I came back into the quote, real world, normal world, modern world, I was hit by how pervasive everyone else's needs and desires are infiltrating and manipulating me
Yeah.
to think that I need, want, and desire to fulfill their need, want, and desires. That's kind of like the overarching theme of it.
Yeah.
Um, and that to me was kind of the biggest transformation that I saw, was like all of my subconscious programming of, oh, I'm supposed to do this. My phone was buzzing on alerts that I had set, of like, oh, you need to go do this and you have to do this. Hey, remember you got this in the morning, or apps reminding me, hey, you haven't used me in a while. And don't you really want to keep learning to speak German, right? Like it's these little things that are like, they're helpful in the day to day. And I'm super thankful that I can set reminders, but it just made me realize, I'm like, why am I even doing this stuff? Like, what's really important? Is this really what I want to be doing? Am I doing it in the way, or have I been hijacked, and programmed to like, oh, well, I don't want to let this person down and I don't want to let this thing down. And I did say I commit to studying this German, but I haven't used it in a week. Like, and then you start feeling bad about yourself. And it just, it highlighted what programs that I still have running that I thought I had addressed previously, or maybe I addressed on some level, but they're still there. They're still nagging, and they're still pulling me in a direction that isn't necessarily the direction I want to live my life in.
Yeah.
And so,
And that to me, it was such a, when you shared it with me, I was like, holy smokes, we don't, and you've done this work. You teach others this work. We're never done. That's the bottom line. And that was the proof that here you thought this adventure was going to be the challenge, and the challenge was coming back into the modern society. Fascinating how, but how many, everybody listening, right? How many times do you think, oh, this is what's going to happen? And then you have the experience and it's like, well, that didn't happen, but this happened, something totally different that was unexpected. And the other thing, being removed and really with your own thoughts, right? You're with nature, with your own thoughts, you had no schedule other than survival,
Mhm.
right? Literally survival. But then when you come back, it becomes even more glaring how we are manipulated every day. And that's not just family and friends and colleagues, whatever. Like, we have jobs to do. Okay. We're not
Yeah,
saying don't do that, but you're like the pings on the phone and do I really need that app anymore? We forget to look at things because it becomes a habit. And sometimes habits are really good and help us. Sometimes habits are not good and they're not helping us. And if we don't reflect upon them, we're not choosing to eliminate or keep them, right? We have to be in a position of choice.
100%.
Yeah. So now dig in, because a lot of this, and like you were saying, with the show's intro that I shared about the ego really is supposedly there to keep us safe. Yet the ego, that 95%, right, that subconscious, is really what's running our life. And I want to say and Dan, you might know better than me, but it's like we have 80,000 thoughts every day, our brain, right? We don't even realize 80,000 thoughts is a lot. Of those, it's like 80 something percent are negative thoughts. And then tomorrow, 90% of our thoughts today are repeated tomorrow. So when we
Mhm.
talk about drilling in the negative mantras, and they're all happening subconsciously to keep us safe, the ego, let's say, we have to really understand what's going on. And so talk to me a little bit about the ego and really the role it ends up playing day to day in our life that we don't even realize is happening.
Yeah, no, and that's it. It's a good segue, because here's the thing, right? Like, the ego is a part of us. There's a lot of popularity around ego death and kill the ego, and the ego is your enemy, and you know there's some truth in this type of thing. However, like, your ego will never go away until you die. Like, it's
Mm,
part of your human avatar, or you have some traumatic accident that knocks off it knocks it offline. Which, hearing some people who've had those types of accidents, like one guy fell off a horse, it knocked part of his brain loose, essentially, in so many words, and he lost his ego for about 4 days. And he
wow.
said it was the most magical experience, and everything was like new to him, and then it came back, and everything came back with it. um, so the ego, it's there to keep us safe. Basically, what it does is it creates identities. And if you think about identities are kind of these packages of traits and behaviors that are rolled up into some sort of avatar. I like to use the word avatar. Um, but basically when you were really little, um, 3, 4, 5 years old, something happened in your life. And there was an event, it was a perceived failure. It wasn't necessarily an actual failure, but 4-year-old Connie was like mortified in this moment and was like, uh-oh, something's wrong. And in that moment, it could have been, your parent yelling at you for something. It could have been a misunderstanding completely. Maybe you found yourself alone on the playground. Your parents were nowhere to be found. And just in that split second, even though they were right there, you just didn't see them. You thought, I'm abandoned, I'm alone, I'm not safe, right? Like you came up with this concept. And from that concept, from that lack, right? Something's wrong, I'm not safe, I'm not good enough. You created a way of being to get yourself out of that situation. Maybe you got really small and you hid, or maybe you got really loud and angry and you started screaming at the top of your lungs and your parents found you, right? Like you created some way of being that got you out of that situation, and it worked, and it worked really well. And so from that, you've created this persona around that, right?
Mm,
You're maybe the loud, bossy person who,
mm,
is really demanding because you realize it helped you in that one situation. And now this thing is actually helping you through your life, right? You're this persona who's it's funny, my youngest is more of that loud, demanding. She's 4, she's almost 5. And my mother-in-law, I love the way she reframes this. She's like, she's either going to be a general or a CEO, right? She's like general or CEO, like in times where she's so demanding and she will like unrelenting, not get her way, just remind yourself like, hey, this could turn out well.
yeah, it's a good
Um,
skill.
it's a good skill. However, this persona of the general or CEO, it becomes your identity, and you think that it's the way you get love. You
Mm,
think it's the way you survive in this world, and it's your worth. So think of
mm,
like pro athletes, right? Or actors and actresses who, use their youth and beauty, in the movies. Well, what happens when they start to lose that? What
mm,
happens when an athlete has a career-ending injury,
mm,
right? This whole loss of purpose. It's the whole loss of like, who am I? If I'm not this, then who am I? Right? And so this is where the ego keeps us from the happiness portion. It keeps us safe. It's helped us out. It's made us a lot of money. It's made us a lot of success. Um, but that which has helped us in those times of need is the thing that is keeping us from actually being happy and satisfied and fulfilled. Because maybe I land a role in this movie and I do an amazing job and I make money and I get all this praise, and then I haven't been cast in a movie for 2 years. Now what? Right now, who am I?
yeah,
I'm not worth anything. I'm not bringing anything. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of affection. And that's really damaging. That's like living from that place of the ego, even though it's, you know, it, I think the ego gets a bad rap. When people think of ego, they think, oh, these big egos and people being pompous. It's like, no, no, no. Like that's one way the ego can play out. But there's ego identities all around humility, being
yeah,
the pauper, I'm the most humble person in the room. And so you're constantly, you're a martyr, you're sacrificing yourself constantly, and you're doing it to get love. You're not doing it. Oh, let me rephrase this. There is a percentage of you that's doing it from a pure place, right? It's not 100% from this selfish place, but because the preponderance is coming from that, I need to do this or else I
mm,
won't be loved, or else
mm,
I won't exist, or else, right? And so all of our habits, all of our traits, the identity is what's controlling those. So when you have this identity of someone who, let's say, is the general or the CEO, their habits are going to be built around that, and it's going to be non-negotiable for them.
mm,
I must be loud in this meeting. I must
mm,
show my presence. I must show my force. I must control this situation. And that's where these habits, they become automatic, they become subconscious, and it's so hard to break them because it's wrapped up in this identity.
yeah,
So instead of just trying to change one little habit when your identity is pulling you in a completely different direction, what we do through the ego coaching and ego mastery course, is we help show you who your ego is. We help you meet your ego and unravel it, and then you can use it for good, right? You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to be like, I'm no longer demanding. I'm no longer caring about being this influential person. It's like, no, you can, but maybe we shift the identity a little bit. Maybe we add some things to it. Maybe we take some things away that are in alignment with it, that will actually help you get to where you actually want to go and the results you actually want in your life.
Yeah. And we don't even know it's happening. That's the kicker, because it's subtle and it's just been there. And I could share, I have one more question. We're almost out of time, but I do want to share a really quick story to show that subconscious at play. I remember I had done a workshop for myself, facilitating for growth. And the facilitator came over to me based on whatever my responses were. And she looked at me and she goes, why are you afraid of success? This was probably about maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I was taken back, Dan. And I said, because if I make too much money or I appear successful, people are going to think I'm a crook. And she goes, why would you think that? And I go, I don't know. But she goes, well, are you a crook? I go, no. I go, you know me. I'm like honest. And, and she goes, then why would you think that? And I said, I don't know. But I'll tell you, Dan, took me about a week. I had to really think about it. And I remembered I was about 5 and we were coming home from the shore in the late 60s. There were riots in Newark where I grew up. We had to take a different way. And there were these beautiful houses up on the hill. So in my mind, princesses live there. So I say out loud to my mom and dad, 6 of us in the car, oh, who lives in those beautiful houses? And at the same time, my mom and dad said, bad people, crooks live there. They kill people. They have guns. We don't ever want to be in this area. You never come here alone. I was 5. In my head, what did I hear? Big house, success, crook, bad people. And it played out for me, 55 years old, right? I hadn't thought about it. I didn't know it was running. I had money issues, success issues because of that child responding that big houses mean a crook. So this is the kind of thing that Dan is talking about. And until somebody pointed it out to me, it would have still been playing out. My business wouldn't have thrived after COVID, right? I probably would have closed up had I had that same mindset. So these shifts can be very profound and subtle, but understanding. And that's why I love what you do, because you help people pinpoint this is what's happening. Now once you see it, that power, man, you have a choice to change it or I like it. I want to keep it. Well, that's fine too, right? So any comments on that? And then I have one more question.
That is a phenomenal example. I mean, that's exactly how it plays out. And it's as subtle as that. It's like why is this? Like, and on a conscious level, rich doesn't equal crook, but the subconscious 4-year-old Connie that's still running the show. One metaphor I'd like to use is the tortoise and the hare. So, and we use this in weight loss all the time. So day 1, you say, I'm ready for a change. I want to lose 10 pounds. Here we go. I'm super committed to that. That's your conscious mind. That's the hare. The hare is going out the gates hot. They're really excited about this. The subconscious is the tortoise. It's the one saying, you're not an athlete. That's not you. You're older than you used to be. You really think your metabolisms didn't slow down over the last 20 years? You got to be kidding me, right? Like, my mom's overweight. My grandmother's overweight. Like, why do I think I'm going to be any different?
Yeah.
And that tortoise, the subconscious, is what ends up, even though consciously you want to lose the weight, the subconscious, if you're not addressing it, not peeling it back and basically unraveling the story it tells itself and you tell yourself, ultimately, like, it's going to be a losing battle. And at worst, that's kind of what usually happens. And at best, it's just going to be this uphill slog fighting against gravity. And that's also not what you need.
Yeah. So here's the thing, I love you. And I think your model is, and you and I talk a lot about this stuff. Dan is helping me a lot for me to get to my next level, right, of evolution. And, we talk about business all the time and strategize together, and we're always learning together, which I love. So I know what would be the next thing that I know you have a free gift for everybody. Tell them what it is, because, and before you answer this, I just want everybody to understand, Obviously you're my cousin, so I'm a little prejudiced, but I'm really not, Dan, because you're the real deal. You understand that mind, body, spirit connection. You as you have a wife, you have kids, you have family, right? You obviously, I'm your cousin, we have family, but
Mm.
you're out there doing what you should be doing to help others achieve what you're trying to achieve. And Dan, we talked Monday, and he said, I can't believe I had this revelation. Like, I'm the mindset coach. And I said, and that's why you're a good mindset coach, because you realized you're still peeling back your onions too. And that's how we elevate others. As I get better with my craft, I elevate others to get there even faster. So with all of that said, right, because you really, to me, it's mindset, but you are the mind, body, spirit. You meet people where they are, you honor people where they are, and you just have this very kind way and kind approach. And I love all of your exercises that you give me to do, because I do them. So what's next with that free gift, so people get a flavor, really get a flavor of you?
Yeah. I thank you for the kind words. I really, uh, life is a journey. Life is an adventure. Growth is always right. And so you're never done. And
Nope.
that's the exciting part of life. I used to think I want to get to this level. And now it's like, that's a cool milestone to pass so that I can see what's next, right?
That's
What's the
right.
next layer to uncover?
That's right.
Uh, the best place to start, and something I created, is this mini course that I want to give to people. It's the Meet Your Ego mini course. It's about 20 to 30 minutes worth of videos and about 20 to 30 minute exercise. So all in all, you dedicate 1 hour, sit down, watch a few videos, do some exercises, and at the end of it, hopefully you'll find your ego. You'll meet at least the main identity that your ego's created. Your ego's created a handful of identities, but maybe the main one that's been, playing out the most in your life.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect place to start.
And it is, because now again, right, information is great to understand what's going on at that subconscious level, make it more tangible, because then that puts you in a powerful position of choosing what that next step is. But now I understand what the next step is, versus I don't even know that's playing out in my subconscious. I don't even know what's happening. So once you understand it, now you can take that next step forward. So thank you so much. That I love that you created that for and guys, he created that just for us. So thank you so much for doing that. If you have a question specific for Dan, I will put all of the links in the show notes, you can be sure, but email him, dan@existenceathletics.com. And Axistence is Axistence. I will put it in the show notes. That's the name of the business. And then, of course, the website is existenceathletics.com. Again, it will be in the show notes. Dan, anything you want to share before we check out? But just brilliant. This stuff is brilliant, necessary. And I think that we can change more lives quickly by creating that mini course and having people go through it, and then, following you on Instagram or emailing you and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Because you're very, very caring and very loving, and you articulate beautifully where people are and what that next potential step is. So anything else you want to say before we sign out?
Oh, thank you. The one thing I would throw out there, and it's kind of I'd say my billboard statement that I like to put, is it. There's been a lot of people who've quoted some similar things, but the concept is like, the way you perceive the world is your reality. And
Mm,
so when you can change your perspective of how you view the world around you changes.
yeah,
Wayne Dyer's got a quote, Gandhi's got some quotes about that. Like,
yeah.
there's a reason for that. And that's probably the most powerful thing. And like, I would say the underlying message is, with all of this work, all we're trying to do is to change your perspective. And when you can change your perspective, your reality is completely different
Yeah.
afterwards.
And that's, it's so funny, because that's why I have two shows, but I love doing these shows, because I share your perspective and my perspective with my stories, or your stories, or whoever the guest is. It doesn't mean that they have to agree with me or agree with you, but hearing someone's idea or thought on a situation or an event that happened, and them thinking, oh, that happened to me. I never thought of it or saw it from that perspective. I feel like we did our job, because it's just expanding our thought process. And that's how we can together really create a magnificent world. But we're, instead of staying very closed and life by default, right? We're just going through motions instead of truly living. And I don't know about you, but I'm going into my coffin worn out. My body's going to be worn out, brother. So I know I
awesome.
lived an adventurous life, right? But it's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dan. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for all the gifts and the links and all the information. I know people are going to resonate with you as I do. So you're freaking doing what you should be doing, my friend. So thank you so much for sharing your zone of genius with my peeps today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. I'm
Always.
sharing me. So thank you.
Yes. You have an open door with me. You know that. And I'm sure the listeners are going to want more. So I think we might have to do quarterly shows or something. We'll talk about it behind the scenes.
That would be great.
I love it. And I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover, no matter where you are on change in your life, your career, whatever it might be. Again, whether you've chosen it or it's thrust upon you. I hope that Dan, my story, things that we shared has given you a thought to change or explore. That's a good word, right? To be curious and explore. That's where change truly ends up happening. Information's a beautiful thing. If you do nothing with it, it's information in your brain. Put it into action. Take one idea that Dan talked about today. Go and take that mini course. These are the call to actions that really can create dramatic change in your life. You're in the driver's seat. Choose to make a change, and whatever that is for you. Dan, thank you again. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.com. I am truly honored to have you on this journey of change with me, and I hope that my guests and I inspire you to take the action you need to create the life you desire. We're here, man. Let's play and let's have a lot of fun. I love you so much. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.